Welcome to VLSI design video. In this video I am going to speak about unit 3 CMOS subsystem design of BE electronics subject. So since this again unit is divided into 6 lectures, so in this first lecture I am going to discuss about semiconductor memories, memory chip organization. The objective of this video is to make you understand semiconductor memories introduction, memory classification, memory architectures and building blocks, introduction to static and dynamic RAMs. After watching all these videos of this particular unit, you will be able to demonstrate an understanding of the working principle of different types of memories. So let's move on to the introduction to semiconductor memories. So if you look at the graph of the demand of the memory capacity, so if you see this graph over the years, it's keep on increasing. The demand for the memory and the capacity of the memory is keeping on increasing. So semiconductor based electronics is the foundation to the information technology society we live in today. Ever since the first transistor was invented way back in 1948, the semiconductor industry has been growing at a tremendous pace. So semiconductor memories and microprocessors are two major fields which are benefited by the growth in semiconductor technology. So the technological advancement has improved performance as well as packing density of these devices over years. Moore made his famous observation in 65, just 4 years after the first planar integrated circuit was discovered. He observed an exponential growth in the number of transistors per integrated circuit, which is what we have seen in the first unit also, the Moore law, in which the number of transistors nearly doubled every couple of years. So this observation, popularly known as Moore's law, has been maintained and still holds true today. Keeping up with this law, the semiconductor memory capacity also increases by a factor of 2 every year. So now moving on to the classification of memory. So semiconductor memories are basically classified into two categories, that is random access and serial access. And in the serial access, it is first in first out and last in first out, whereas in the random access it is read write memory, that is RAM, and read only memory, it is ROM. Again in the read write memory it is SRAM and DRAM, whereas in the ROM it is classified into non-volatile ROM as well as non-volatile read write. And in the non-volatile ROM it is programmable logic devices as well as the ROM, and in non-volatile read write it is erasable programmable read only memory, electrically erasable PROM as well as flash. So this memory classification is again done based on the size and based on the sum of the factors which I am going to discuss now. So based on the size, depending upon the level of abstraction, different means are used to express the size of the memory unit. A circuit designer usually expresses memory in terms of bits, which are equivalent to the number of individual cells need to store the data. So going up one level in the hierarchy to the chip level design, it is common to express memory in terms of bytes, which is nothing but a group of 8 bits. And on a system level, it can be expressed in terms of words or pages, which are in turn collection of bytes. Next, based on the function, semiconductor memories are most often classified on the basis of access patterns, memory functionality, and the nature of storage mechanism. So based on the access patterns, they can be classified into random and serial access. Random access memory can be accessed for read write in random fashion. On the other hand, in serial, the data can be accessed only in serial fashion. So first in first out, that which I've shown you in the graphical classification plot, we have first in first out and last in first out are example of serial memories. So most of the memories fall under the random access type. Based on their functionalities, memories can be classified into read-write memories and read-only memories. So read-write, again, that means it is flexible. So SRAM and DRAM come under that category, and read-only memory, on the other hand, it encodes the information into circuit topology. Since the topology is hardwired, the data cannot be modified. It can only be read. However, ROM structures belong to the class of non-volatile memories. Removal of the supply voltage does not result in a loss of stored data, that we all know. So examples are PROM, ROMs and PLDs. So the most recent entry in the field are memory modules that can be classified as non-volatile and volatile. So typically write operation takes substantially longer time than the read operation. So EEPROM, EEPROM and flash fall under this category. Based on the timing parameters, the timing properties of a memory are illustrated in the figure you can see here. So for some time period it read appears, and next time slot the write cycle appears. So the time it takes to retrieve the data from the memory is called read access time here, and this is equal to the delay between the read request and the moment the data is available on the output. And similarly write access, this is the write access time, is the time elapsed between the write request and final writing of the output data. So here the writing data is done. Finally, then there is another important parameter which is called cycle time, read cycle and write cycle. So which is the minimum time required between two successive read or two successive write. The straightforward way of implementing n-word memory is to stack the words in a linear fashion and select one word at a time for reading or writing operation by means of a select bit. So this is, you can see here, how many word size? It is n word size. So the memory storage cells are again n, which is S0 to Sn minus 1. So the memory cells are n again, and the word size is also n. Only one such select signal can be high at a time. So here the storage cells which are shown as shaded, so one can be selected as a high at a time. Though this approach is shown figure looks quite simple, one runs into a number of problems when trying to use it for large memories. The number of interface pins in the memory module varies linearly with the size of the memory, and this can run into huge values. So to overcome this problem, the address provided to the memory module is generally encoded as shown in the figure you can see here below. It is encoded, so all the cells or storage cells are not straight away taken, they are encoded. So using the decoder you can see the accessing. A decoder is used internally to decode this address and make appropriate select line. So this decoder will make the appropriate selection of that particular lines, making them high. With the K address, suppose I have the K address, out of which it decodes and gives me 2 power K. Okay, so the number of select pins can be driven, and hence the number of interface pins will be reduced by a factor of log n. Though this approach resolves the select problem, it does not address the issues of the memory aspect ratio. For a n-word memory with a word length of m, length of this word is m, the aspect ratio will be nearly n is to m, which is very difficult to implement for large values of n. So this is again one such storage cell which is shown. So also such sort of design slows down the circuit very much. This is because the vertical wires connecting the storage cell to the input and output become excessively long. So you can see we have the vertical lines as well as we have the horizontal lines. So they become so much long. To address this problem, memory arrays are organized so that vertical and horizontal dimensions are of the same order of magnitude, making the aspect ratio close to unity. We are maintaining same so that on both sides it should be equal. To route the correct word, called column decoder is used. Row decoder is to select the word line, and column decoder is to select particular storage cell. The address word is partitioned into column address and row address. The row address enables one of the row of the memory, while column address picks particular word from the selected row. So now moving on to the basics of static and dynamic RAMs. RAMs are of two types, which are static and dynamic. Circuits similar to basic D flip-flop are used to construct static RAMs internally. A typical SRAM cell consists of 6 transistors which are connected in such a way as to form a regenerative feedback. In contrast, DRAM, the information stored in is stable and does not require clocking or refresh cycles to sustain it. But for DRAM we need refresh circuit, but for SRAM we do not need such thing. Compared to DRAMs, SRAMs are much faster, having typical access time in the order of a few nanoseconds. Hence, SRAMs are used as level 2 cache memory. So DRAMs, moving on to the DRAMs. DRAMs do not use flip-flops, but instead are an array of cells, each containing a transistor and a capacitor. Zeros and ones can be stored by charging or discharging the capacitor. The electric charge tends to leak out, and hence each bit in a DRAM must be refreshed every few milliseconds to prevent the loss of data. This requires external logic to take care of refreshing, which makes interfacing of DRAMs more complex than SRAM. This disadvantage is compensated by their larger capacities. A high packaging density is achieved since DRAMs require only one transistor and one capacitor per bit. This makes them ideal to build main memories, but DRAMs are slower, having delays in the order tens of nanoseconds. Thus, the combination of static RAM cache and the dynamic RAM main memory attempts to combine the good properties of each. Thank you for watching.